Good afternoon, good evening, good day, depending on where you're at in the world. Looking at the list of people, first of all, it's a pretty good list, pretty good size list of people. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We really appreciate it and hope you're getting something out of these webinars that we host every other week or so. My name is Scott Courtier, and I'll be hosting today's webinar covering Dream Report with InduSoft Web Studio. Just as a quick note, for those of you who have never attended one of these webinars before, I'm going to cover a brief overview of InduSoft, what the company is, and some of the products that we have, or the product that we have. And after we're done viewing today's webinar, you'll be sent a survey and an email with a link that will have a way to get to the presentation, as well as the video when we post it online in just a few days. And that survey, once you fill out that survey, if you tell us your shirt size and your address, then we'll send you off a T-shirt that showcases the webinar series that we have here. So if you're not familiar with that, please fill out that survey. We'd like to hear back from you. We'd like to find out what topics you'd like on future webinars and any other questions you might have. And feel free to bring that along to us. So today's agenda is we're going to go do a brief overview of InduSoft, what the company is. And we'll talk about the InduSoft Web Studio communications and how the different ways that InduSoft Web Studio can really share information between the different communications technologies, acting kind of as a gateway, which will kind of segue right into how Dream Report ties back into InduSoft Web Studio. Built-in reporting within InduSoft Web Studio. If you're attending this webinar on Dream Report, we're making the assumption that you have some interest in doing reporting in general, so I'll cover the built-in tools within InduSoft Web Studio as kind of a precursor to what Dream Report can do, and the different formats such as text, rich text format, HTML, XML, CSV, and even PDF. And we'll talk about emailing of reports, or any file attachment for that matter, and I'll show you the scripting commands for doing that. And that's important not only for the built-in InduSoft Web Studio reports, but if you want to attach one of the reports created by Dream Reports to an email, you can do that as well. Then we'll get into configuring Dream Report. We'll connect to data sources. We'll design some reports or a report and bring in some of the charting and graphing tools, and we'll talk a bit about that and how to tie into that data. We'll actually generate some reports so you can see those. And then we'll talk about some additional resources, things like videos that we have on the website revolving around Dream Report, the previous webinar that we did, as well as the tutorial manual and tutorial projects that we have on the topic as well. So briefly, let's get started here. The company overview. InduSoft was established in the U.S. in 1997. We're headquartered in Austin, Texas, and we've got a handful of offices around the world. We've got myself, I'm located in Michigan. We have two offices in Brazil, and an office in Germany as well. So we cover quite a bit of the globe out of those offices. And then we have distributors, representatives, certified integrators, sales organizations around the world that can cover the product for us as well. We're a pioneer in the industry. We're the first to have an HMI SCADA package for Microsoft Windows CE, and going back to the very early versions of Windows CE. And the really nice thing about that is it's kept the product very efficient and very small footprint, so that it's fast and easy to deploy. It takes up very low space as far as what the product is capable of doing on the hard drive, memory, things of that nature. We were also the first to have a web solution and XML integration, and that helps with our web publishing, getting the ability to get remote information out to remote computers as thin clients, or in some cases even iPads, Android, tablets, phones, smartphones, things of that nature. Anything that's HTML5 based, we can get information out to, alarms, trends, things of that nature. And we have a patent for our database connectivity, and that's one of the many features within InduSoft Web Studio that makes it pretty unique. The ability to get information from Windows CE devices or even embedded devices into SQL databases that otherwise would not be able to be accomplished. And again, we have a patent for that. We've got certifications, all kinds of different certifications. Some are highlighted here. Some are, for example, we're a Microsoft Gold certified partner. We've been an OPC Foundation member since 1998. We're an embedded Windows partner as well. We've got ISO 9001, 2008 registered firm certification as well. And let's go on to the next slide here. Something we're pretty proud of. We've won the Control Engineering Magazine Engineer's Choice Awards for 3 out of the last 4 years. Back in 2011, we came in honorable mention or second place. But this year, we actually won 3 different awards. We were in Chicago last week picking up these awards. We've won for InduSoft Web Studio, our HMI and SCADA product. We've also won for our Business Intelligence Dashboard template product that we have, and the Mobile Access product, which is the ability to get data and information out to smartphones, iPads, tablets, things of that nature. What I would also like to mention as we're getting started here, I can't hear you. Part of the way we've done this presentation, there are so many people logged in that we have everybody basically muted, and that you can put any comments or questions that you have in the chat window. You'll find that very usually in the little drop down at the top of your monitor, the chat window or the Q&A. If you have questions, we prefer those in the Q&A, but you can also put them in the chat window as well. So again, if you have those, I'll be taking questions towards the end of the webinar and put those in either of those windows. Talking about InduSoft Web Studio Communications for a moment, I want to show you this diagram. And if we think of InduSoft Web Studio, and oh, by the way, InduSoft Incorporated Inc., InduSoft Inc. is the company name. InduSoft Web Studio is the product name. So sometimes I will accidentally say InduSoft meaning the product, but I really mean InduSoft Web Studio as a product. But if we take a look at the center part of this diagram, InduSoft Web Studio is at the core of all of these different communications capabilities that we have. You know, some people will think of the over 240 drivers that we have built in for PLCs, temperature controllers, USB devices, things of that nature. We can communicate with almost any plant floor device or industrial automation device, Omron, GE, Allen Bradley, Siemens, the list goes on and on and on. That's just one of many ways that we have to communicate. If we don't happen to have the driver that you want for the particular device that you want to communicate with, you can use OPC, optionally use OPC to get to those devices. And we support many different OPC technologies. The OPC that many people are familiar with is the OPC DA, which is OPC Data Access, and the OPC Foundation is now calling that OPC Classic. And that has to run on a Windows PC because it uses COM and DCOM for the connection mechanism or communication mechanism. That's an older Windows communications technology. OPC has come up with OPC Unified Architecture, and that is a operating system independent or platform independent version of OPC. They also support OPC.NET and XML as well, and all of those are available either built-in or optionally within InduSoft Web Studio. Actually, all of them are built-in except for the XML is an optional add-on. Now, those are clients so that we can communicate to anybody else's server and then get to anybody else's device. But we also support OPC Server. We have our own OPC Server built-in, OPC DA Server, HDA, as well as a couple of others, and that allows other stations, other OPC clients to come in and communicate with us and get our information out of our tag database within InduSoft Web Studio. We can communicate and send information, as I mentioned before, via email and HTML and web publishing and thin clients, things of that nature. We can also use XML and some database objects and even older DDE as well. We get, for example, SQL and communication to just about any databases out there. SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle, Sybase, FoxPro, OSI Pi, and other historians, as well as SAP and other ERP and MES systems for that matter. And then, of course, if that all isn't enough, then we have our toolkits that you can get access to our drivers and our tag database and allow you to write your own interfaces to those. But if you're going to write your own interface to one of our drivers or try to write your own drivers, come check with us, because there's a chance that maybe we're already working on it, and or we'll take yours as one more that we'll add to the pile, and we'll write that driver, and maybe possibly we'll include it in the product for everybody else as well. So having pointed out all these different communications technologies, the big point, or why I'm even bringing this up, is if you think about InduSoft Web Studio here at the middle acting as the communications gateway. For example, if you wanted to get PLC information, some I/O, some information from the PLC into the database, you can use this as a gateway. Or let's say from OPC into the database, or from database out to the PLC. You can use this, again, as kind of a communications gateway and go from any source to any destination here and get that information where it needs to be. And quite frankly, this is how we tie into the Dream Report product, and we'll understanding this, and we'll bring that up in a little bit, is going to be important. Some of the built-in reporting tools that we have in the product. The built-in reporting tool is based on text, and basically you format your report just by typing text like you would in any other document, and then inside of curly brackets you put tags, system tags, or even function names, and that will take a snapshot of that data or get that information out when that report is printed. By printed, I mean it can print a disk, it can print a printer, or there's even a PDF writer built into the product, and can send out a PDF. So the basic text report, or the basic report, is text. We can also do rich text format, or RTF, which will get you graphics. You can put logos in there. You can change colors of fonts, change the fonts, the sizes, things of that nature. For those of you who go way back when Windows expanded kind of Notepad to become WordPad, and you got all that flexibility to change fonts and add graphics, it was kind of along those similar lines. Because this is just a text generator, if you will, we can also output to CSV files, which are comma-separated variable files, which can be brought into Excel. And they don't even need to be comma-separated. They could be any delimiter that you want. It could be a semicolon, a colon, a space, a pipe character, that vertical character that is above the backslash on your keyboard that almost nobody knows what it is. And because these formats are text-based as well, we can output XML or even HTML and generate HTML reports. And as I mentioned, all of these can be sent out as PDFs as well. So continuing on here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring project into view, an InduSoft Web Studio project here that we've created. Now this is actually a slightly modified version of our PC demo application. This application is modified to work with Dream Reports a little bit, but it's still basically at heart our PC demo project. So if you're not familiar with that, go take a look at the InduSoft Web Studio install, and hopefully you'll be able to find the PC demo. If not, let us know, and we'll help you find that. Within this project, we have built these tasks for reports, and you can see we have the four different types here for text, rich text format, HTML, and CSV. So I'm going to open these up and show you that this just has text in it, and wherever the date and the time are at, or these built-in functions that are included in the curly brackets, those will take a snapshot of the value at runtime and print that to the report. So take a look at this format. You'll see this in a minute. I'm going to close this, and then I'll bring up the CSV report. The CSV report is basically the same thing, but again, it's comma-separated variable, and so it just has a comma in between each of where the columns will be, separating that. So when we bring this into Excel or view this as a text file, we'll know how to see and interpret those delimiters. Also note here the output file. We are using a built-in InduSoft Web Studio function for get application path. That allows us to concatenate that string and know where we are running the project, and this output file will go to that project in the web subfolder, and then we'll name that under report files, and then we'll name it my report. That automatically can then find the project or the application path. So even if you move this to another computer, it will find where it's running, and can be very efficient in keeping everything tight and in that folder, so that if you need to make an archive or a backup, it'll be right there. Another thing that we can do here, back on the text or the CSV for that matter, is there's a checkbox here for disk append. What some people might do is put a header as one report, and then the body of the report they might choose append, and every time they print that to file, it'll just be this bottom section over and over and over again. That way it doesn't have to print that header information over and over again. So that's an opportunity there as well. Now let's take a look at the HTML format here. And because HTML is just text, that's all we're doing is typing in the HTML. And if you don't know HTML, a good website is called w3schools.com. Again, that's w3schools.com. There's a few others to teach you HTML. But basically, we're putting the logo in here. We're setting some fonts, setting some colors. We're creating a table. And then we're setting the different rows and different columns to different colors. And then in the individual cells, we're putting the Boolean value, then the value of blink slow, so that'll be either an on or off bit. We're putting an integer value, and we're including the system tag called analog value. We're putting in, again, we're changing colors here and string values, and the computer name, so that'll show my computer name, and then we're even doing a function within getting a random number, multiplying it by 100 as well. So we'll see that here in just a minute. So when I run this project, I should be able to excuse me, run this. And for those of you who have seen PC Demo, you'll notice that that's all that it really is PC Demo, and down here we've got an extra button for generating a dream report. And from here I'll be able to go to Features, Reports over here on the right hand side, and here's the different reports, and in a minute I'll show you what these buttons are doing. But basically, if you've never done this on your machine, you'll have to save the report. In this case it's saving to the hard drive, and then I'll be able to view, and this is launching in this case Notepad. So you can see that report format that I said look at this format, because you'll see it again. Well, here it is. You can see that it just put the text out, but then it put the snapshot of the date and the time, and the variables or the tags there. In a similar fashion, we can do this with the rich text format. I'll save that, and then I'll launch. And because this has more than just text, it's actually launching Word, and you can see the logo there, the different fonts, different colors, different sizes, things of that nature. Close down Word. And then we'll look at the CSV format, and this is going to be brought into Excel. It doesn't have to be brought into Excel. This just happens to be what Windows associates with the .csv, but you could open it up in Notepad or any other viewer for that matter. So here are the two different columns, and it uses the comma to separate the columns so that you can see this column, comma, that column, and that's what the CSV does for you. So let's close Excel. And last but not least, the HTML format here. We'll save this. And if you remember, I was showing you the table and how that got generated. And so here's that opening up in Internet Explorer. You can see the table and the different values in there. There's that string value that has been replaced with the name of my PC. And now you can start to see that you can generate some a little bit fancier reports. What you could even do here is take snapshots of screens, snapshots of different components within InduSoft Web Studio, take snapshots of those as JPEGs, and then incorporate them into your reports if you so chose. And there's a lot of other automation that you can do to get reports in HTML format as well. I also wanted to bring up that again, there's a PDF writer built into InduSoft Web Studio, and just with some simple scripting commands, you can take any document, whether it be a CSV file, whether it be a Word document, whatever the case may be, and turn it into a PDF, which you could then attach to any email if you wanted, and get that information out to a real-world environment where it can be used. Okay. So let's move on to talking just briefly about the functions that are on these buttons. This is, oops, I moved the development environment off instead of the runtime. Hang on a second here. Let's go back into the graphics here and go into the reports screen, and you can see these buttons. What they have done is built in VB Script And by putting a $sign in front of any InduSoft built-in scripting command, we can use the built-in script within VBScript. And here we're issuing the report command. We're saying go to disk and report.text or report.text.rep, which then uses essentially this template that we've created over here. Here's the report.text.rep, prints that snapshot of those values and puts those to disk. And then we launch the appropriate viewer with each of these buttons. Taking a brief look here under the help system, if we then go to search and we look at the report command, the report command will show us, the report built-in function will show us how that command is formatted. It's basically the function and the orientation that you want, and the function is either disk or to the default printer or even to a PDF, and whether or not it's portrait or landscape. There's some error codes returned from that, and then here's some great examples. So if you wanted to even just copy these and use these within a button or automatically trigger these, you can do that as well. So that's how that is used. So let's put away the help system here for a moment and go back into, let's see, the PowerPoint. Let's talk about emailing reports as attachments. Before we even get to the Dream Report, I want to talk about some of the functionality that we have for emailing. You can configure the server in a couple of different ways. We have a drop-down configuration that's a fill-in-the-blank menu-driven configuration tool, or you can do it via scripting as well. Let me show you where those are at. If we close our screen here and we go under Project, here's the section here called email/FTP, where we can set up our email server or even FTP. But here under email, you can set up who it's to, the username and password on your email account. Basically, you're setting up the server information for this. And one of the things I recommend, and you'll see a link for this later on, is the sample application that we have on our DVD and our website that shows you how to set some of this up, and I'll point you to that in a minute. But it makes life a lot easier to understand. In the email, do I need just my username? Do I need my username and the @sign? My domain? What do I put here for username? Is it the same? What is the case? So that sample application allows you to test that very easily by configuring that without having to stop and start the application a whole bunch of times. So I recommend that. If you're going to do that. As an alternative to this, what you can do is use the built-in script command, which allows you to do pretty much the same thing, but you can do it via scripting and therefore be a little bit more flexible on what you want to do. And this config or CNF email is essentially that exact same menu that I just showed to you, but here you have the flexibility of being able to configure it using scripting and change things on the fly. So maybe one particular email you want to go to one set of people, maybe you want to use a different way to configure that, or a different email address on who that comes from, so on and so forth. Now another one of the functions that I need to point out is this send email and send email extended. The extended one allows you to attach basically an unlimited number of files, and you can also choose who you want the email to go to, who you want it to be carbon copied to, or CC, or even BCC, and then attach files at the end of this. And I'll show you an example of that in just a second. But that's how you might take a report that would be generated within InduSoft Web Studio, or any document for that matter, attach it to an email, and then send it off to the appropriate recipient. So using that command, that looks something like this: send email extended. Here you have the different options for that, who it would be going to, who it would be CC, who it would be BCC. If you have more than one in each section, you would separate those by, I believe, semicolons, it says in the help. And then the attachment, in this case there's only one attachment. It's a production report generated on 2013 as of next couple of days or so here. So you can see how you can use that. There's a good example of that. So let's talk about Dream Report and how you would use this. Give me just a second here. I'm going to mute myself. You're not going offline. Just a second. All right, getting into the Dream Report here. The first thing that we have to do is have that project running. In this case, I happen to have that demo project running. And where this demo project came from is we have on our website, which I'll show you in a few minutes, we have this project. We have where you can download Dream Report with the InduSoft connectivity built into it. We have a tutorial, which I highly recommend walking through. That's where I've gotten most of my information from. And before we get into this, I want to point out just how this connects and works. Here we have InduSoft Web Studio version 7.1 or above, and we're running a project. And we essentially generate connection to a database, either Microsoft SQL Server 2008 R2 or 2012. And sometimes questions come up here of whether or not we can use the free versions of Microsoft SQL Server Express, and the answer is yes. I happen to be using SQL Server Express 2008 R2 for this demonstration. But the information goes into the database, and then the Dream Report pulls the information out of that database. So we have to make connections to that. So that's one of the next things that I'm going to do. In addition to that, we can take some of the information from the project and put it into logged values within Dream Report itself. Then we compile the report, and the runtime, the Dream Report runtime, then generates the output. And typically what we're going to do here is generate a PDF, and that's what we're going to do in today's webinar. So let's move this out of the way. Then the next step that we're going to do here is, well, first we'll talk a bit about what Dream Report is. Hopefully you know something if you've wanted to attend this webinar. It's a third-party reporting tool. By third-party reporting, or by third-party, I mean that it's not an InduSoft product. We've partnered up with Ocean Data, and their product is called Dream Report. And really, why did we do that? It's some people have requested more rich, more detailed reports, a little bit more analysis than what the built-in reporting tools can do within InduSoft Web Studio. Quite honestly, there's a lot of things that you can do with the reports built into InduSoft Web Studio. If you know VB Script, if you know some programming, there's a lot of horsepower built in there. But some people wanted an easier way to do this, so we partnered up with these guys and are now giving you a way to get access to Dream Report. Essentially, you download this from InduSoft directly and license it from InduSoft directly, because we happen to have on our website the version that has the connectivity to InduSoft Web Studio built into it. So we're going to show you how to connect up to the trends and the alarms and events. And in just a minute, I'll come back to this slide and show you how that works. So the first thing that I've done here is within InduSoft Web Studio, within the project, I'm going to stop it now because I can't get at the configuration unless my project is stopped. I'm going to go configure here under Project Options the default database. And I've done this before the webinar started, so everything's going to be filled in here. But the basic steps are, and again, I highly recommend that you follow the tutorial that we have online. You're going to click on this ellipse button here, this Browse, and this will allow you to configure your connection to the database. And let's see, I haven't showed you the database yet. Let's open up Microsoft SQL Server 2008 Express R2, and we'll open up the management tools here, and I'll show you the actual databases. So while this is loading, again, if you have any questions, put those in the Q&A or chat boxes, and again, don't forget to fill out the survey when you get that. Okay, so here is the database management tool from Microsoft, and I am going to connect to this I'm going to connect to this server name, and I'm going to use SQL Server authentication, not Windows authentication. When I set up this database, that's how I set that up. And good thing to note, when you configure this database, when you install this database, you cannot be logged on as a user with administrative privileges. You have to be logged on to the computer as the administrator. So that's very important. I've proven to myself that won't work if you try it and think, oh, I can make this work. No, it's actually a Microsoft requirement, because the way that the DNS, the data source names are created, that's a Microsoft requirement that you have to be the administrator, not logged on with administrative rights. So here I'm going to put in my password. I'm going to click Remember Password, connect to this database or connect to this engine. And once I do that, I'll see the management tool pop up here in just a second, and then I'll show you where the databases are within this. And in the tutorial, it shows you how to walk through all these different steps and create these databases. There's 2 databases that we create throughout the tutorial. And let's see, that's open. Let's see, where is that? That is open somewhere behind the scenes here. There it is. Let me pull that on screen. So this is the Microsoft SQL Server Management tool, and if I expand these databases, you will see that I have Dream Report Logging and PC Demo Mod Project, and under PC Demo Mod Project, there's several tables that are created from running this project already. But again, this is the PC Demo Mod Project, and that database, and I'll take this off here. And here back into my InduSoft configuration, I'm tying into that same engine. I'm not using the integrated Windows integrated security, but I'm using the system administrator and the password that I give it. I'm telling it to save that. And then out of those different databases that are within that server, I'm going to point to that PC Demo Mod project. Once I've done that, I can test my connection. That should be okay, which it is. That's a good sign. And I can remember 10 or 15 years ago that step right there would take me about a week to do. So we've come a long way within InduSoft Web Studio, making it very easy for you to configure. So at this point, I'm going to click on OK, and now what this has done, has enabled us to use this default database connection anywhere within the project. And one of the things that we've done here is change from proprietary to database format. So now our events and our alarms will go to the database format. And then one other thing that we've done within the trend logging worksheets, we've changed those from proprietary to database as well. So we have to get that information into the database so that we can use Dream Report to connect to that same source and pull the data out of there. So once that is done, we can start our project running. Very important that you have your project running. Otherwise, Dream Report won't have anything to connect to. So I have that running. I'm going to move that off screen. I will move the development environment off screen as well. And so the next thing that we do is we're going to go into Dream Report, and let's open up Dream Report here and configure a new project and a new report and get that communicating with the database and show you how that's done. So we're doing good on time, and we'll get going here. All right, so Dream Report has come up off screen here. I have to do a step to get it to come back up on screen, so give me just a second here. Let's see. Bear with me just a second. It's come up on my other monitor here, and it won't let me grab the title bar until I fill in a couple of menus here. Here we go. So what I'll do is close this and start over from scratch. And I think now that I've closed it while it's on that screen, it'll open back up on this screen, hopefully. All right. Yes, here we go. Okay, so the first option that you're given is the ability to register the product if you've been given a registered or a licensed copy, which you could do from InduSoft. Or in this case, we're just going to run this in the evaluation mode, which will just put some text on the report that says something like, please register. You'll see that. In this case, I'm going to just evaluate, and we'll talk about licensing towards the tail end of the webinar here. So I'm going to create a brand new project. I am not going to use the project wizard at this point. If I had already created a project, I could open existing, but in this case, I want to show you and walk you through how to create a new project. So here I'm going to click on New. Now this will open up the project settings. We're not at the report settings yet. We're still at the upper level project settings. Now I'm going to give this a new project name. We'll call this Dream Report Afternoon Webinar. I can put myself as the author in here, description, things of that nature, the database definition, how do we get information. Notice here that we can either do from SQL or from Microsoft Access. Those are the two different database types that were supported. Or we can use a custom database using a data source name as well, which is what we're going to do. And we're going to add this. And this is the piece that needs administrative login used. So we're going to create a system data source. We're going to click on Next, and we're going to pull down the different sources here. Now, if you're using 2008 Microsoft SQL Server 2008, you would choose Client 10, and if you're using SQL Server 2012, you would use 11. I'm not sure why they chose those numbering schemes. I don't know if that's their versioning or whatnot, but again, 2008 is 10.0. So we're going to click on Next and Finish. And now we have to give it a name, and we'll just call this DR Afternoon. And we can optionally give this a description. And what server do we want this to point to? I could pull the drop down and wait for it to go out and search, but I know where I'm at. I'm just going to point to the server that's on my PC, which is my last name, -PC /SQL Express. And should be able to click on Next. And do we want the Windows integrated security? No. I chose the Windows SQL authentication, and I use SA for system administrator. And then the password that I typed in when I created the database, I should be able to click Next. And I'm going to point to that default database within that server that we had set up, which is the PC Demo Mod project. And everything else I'm going to keep the same. And on this page, let's see, I think everything is default on here. Click on Finish. It's going to let me know how that it was created. I should be able to test this, and with any luck, we'll see test completed successfully. So that's good news. Looks like I can follow instructions from the tutorial that we have created. That helps me get to here. Now at this point, it's tied into that database. I need to put in the login and password here and test the connection. That means good, we're good. I can do some limiting factors here, logging. I can configure some of the web configuration in here, set paths to where this will be stored, log files, things of that nature. So there's quite a bit of ways to do this. I'm just going to click on OK here. Now that set up the project and how this project has some of the data sources available to it. Now you can see here we've created a blank report, or it's automatically created that blank report for us. And at this point, what we can do is start building our report. But before we do that, we have to be able to tie into the data that we're looking for here. So I'm going to go click on driver configuration button. And here you'll see three different data sources, one of which is InduSoft. And this is where, when you download Dream Report from the InduSoft website, this is why, because you'll have this built in here as the data source. So what we'll do is we'll just highlight this first one and go ahead and click on Configure. Notice over here on the right-hand side, we only have the analytics. What we'll end up doing is adding these over here in just a minute. So I will go Configure. And rather than configuring each individual one, it gives me the opportunity to go pull my running project that I have, my InduSoft Web Studio running project, and look for everything there. So what I'm going to do is point to the project, which happens to be here under Administrator, My Documents, InduSoft Web Studio 7.1, and then here's the demo project that was that I downloaded from with the tutorial project from the website. So I'm going to choose that. And there's no built-in security, or it's just guessed within that project, so I can then load this. And one more step, I have to provide that data source connection here. I'll just do my password there again. I should be able to click on OK at this point. And now I've added all of those different drivers into Dream Report. Now, drivers are not like the PLC drivers, but this gives us a connection back to that data source into the InduSoft real-time values, the historical values, the alarms and events. Now, what I'm going to do here is make sure that I have configured these right. I'm going to click on one of these, configure, and then test my connection. Test that connection is good for that one. And I'll go through each of these and test the connection. And hopefully, we'll see OK or good on each one, and the last one will be the events here. And good. That's very good news. That means I can communicate with the database and get the information in here, and I should be good to go and design a report at this point. So now comes the part where we can see how to configure this report, put objects on the report itself. Before I do that, I'm going to right-click here on the report 0 and change some of the report settings. First thing that I'm going to do is change the report name. We'll call this production report. And we could add a description of it here, keep copies of it, so on and so forth. The report name format, when we save this to disk, it's going to put the report name, it's going to concatenate an underscore, and then put the full timestamp at the end of it, and that's what it's going to use as the file name when it saves it to the hard drive. Let's see, I don't need anything else in here. The report time definition can define how we show the time. Report on event, generate the report on event. I'm not going to do this in here, but I'm going to show you how to do it. One of the things that we could do is enable generating the report on an event and enable this instance. And by drilling into the InduSoft connection that we just made a few minutes ago, I know that we have placed a button on one of those screens, and if I scroll down here, that button is called B for Boolean Generate Dream Report. I could then add this and then say whenever that goes to a 1, then generate this report, and that would do that. There's other dynamic ways to generate a report, which I'll show you once we get into the runtime. So I'm going to turn this back off because I'm not going to use this here. But I wanted to show you how that could be done. The report file format is here. This can generate web information, but in this case I'm just going to generate this to PDF. I could set up settings in here. I could do email, printer, Excel, so on and so forth. And one of the things that we have an option to do is open the report after file generation. This way you don't have to have the operator manually open that up. Maybe you don't want to open this and you just want to attach it to an email and send it. That's optional too. You can do that. But for this, I'm going to just have that automatically open up. We have some other drop downs here. Actually, these roll-ups, these are called. And I don't think I need to configure any of these. Notice up here this still says report 0, and when I hit apply it puts that title up there, that production report that I had entered here. And notice over here it still says report 0. When I click on OK, it now calls that production report. Okay, so now we've established through this how to communicate and how the formatting of this will look. So let's take this blank report and make it look kind of nice. So what we're going to do first is right-click here on the background here and change the background. Now, Dream Report has built into it some clip art, and we're going to browse for a background picture here. And what I'm going to do is go to the clip art gallery, report backgrounds, and let's see, we'll choose this number 15 here, which is nice inside building that shows that our business is doing really well and makes it look really nice. But again, you could choose any background that you want. And maybe you might then want a logo. Instead of a logo, I'm just going to choose a world map. We've got a lot of people from around the world signed in. So let's, sorry, I need to then draw where I want that to be. And we'll go back to clip art, images, miscellaneous, and then here we'll choose a globe picture or world map picture. And then maybe I think we need a title here. So what we're going to choose is over here from these different icons, you can see that we have down here dynamic text, and we're going to choose that. We're eventually going to choose the date and the time. We have pie charts, indicators, alarm tables, item tables, so on and so forth, and we can get at some other functionality here. But what I'm going to do here is grab this bottom icon and click on it, and then that's dynamic text, and I'm going to draw a window here where I want my report name to appear. And this dynamic data can be different things. It can be the file name, the full file name, the project name, current user, so you can get a lot of information out of this. But in this case, we're just going to use the report name. Click on OK. And there we have a little piece of text that says report name. Well, I want to modify that. I want to make that a little bit bigger. Let's jump that up to maybe 28-point font, and we'll turn that bold, and then we can position that wherever we want to, center that up a bit. Now the next thing that we're going to grab is the date and the time, and embed this in here, and I'll put the date and time right over here in the upper right hand corner. And we have to name this object, so I'll call this date, time, and we can choose different formats. We could choose whether or not we want it to grab that at time at the start of the report, at the end of the report, or when the report was generated, how we want it to appear, the date and time, or the format of this, just the date, the day of the week. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And let's see, is there anything else we need to put in here? I think we're okay on everything there. Let's try this. And maybe we want to bump that font size up just a little bit there. Okay, so you can see that we've got the date and time, the report name in there. Now let's grab some information that's coming from InduSoft Web Studio. So let's grab this chart object here. And once I click on that, then I'll draw a rectangular window where I want that to appear on the report. And then after a little bit, it'll come up and ask me to configure that. Now, notice here that I have the definition. Hopefully you guys can see that. That's hiding behind that little window there. It says definition. And then here I can choose whether I want it to come from the Dream Report history database or the external history server. In this case, I'm going to choose external history server, which is the database that we have created, and I'm going to choose the data source and item name in there by clicking on the little browse or little ellipse button here. The drop down, I'll choose to InduSoft here, and now that's going to go out to that database and pull that information in. So you should be able to see here all the different tags that we've logged into that database. So what am I going to show here on this chart? Let's open up the food tank, and we'll go to tank number 1, and we'll grab the level out of that. Now I believe where that's coming from, if I go to my InduSoft runtime here, bring that back into play here under the food and beverage, it's grabbing from one of these tanks and showing you the level that's in one of these tanks. And I think I can click on these and I can show you that level going up and down. So that's essentially what we're grabbing there. So we've got the food tank from tank 1, the level. The start of the report period, we want this to, I don't want to go back to yesterday or the day before for the sake of this demo. I want just today, and I want to go back maybe 10 minutes worth. Do I have anything else that I need to configure? Notice here that it's blue, and I can put a legend on here, the text if I wanted to. The appearance, do I need to change anything else in here? I can put a chart name on there if I wanted. Let's see, I don't need anything else. At this point, it's critical that I add this line to the chart, otherwise that line will not show up. Trust me, that's critical. I've missed that step. At this point, I can click on OK, and now you can see here that report formatting. If you wanted to change its size or placement, you could do that. And at this point, this report is ready to run. So let's give this a try. Let's go ahead and click on, first we want to save the report. It will prompt you if you had not saved it before. And now I want to reload this project. So this is going to churn for a second. And then the runtime portion of Dream Report will come up. And once we get that, you'll see this. And any second now, it should be here. Okay, here's the runtime. We can see that we're tied to our Dream Report Afternoon webinar project. I will choose my production report by clicking on this, and I can see that it's running in the background, and I can generate this report manually here. I can click on that, and if you remember, we configured it to automatically open up our document, and there is our production report as we configured it with the date and the time, the title up there, the little logo, and then the actual data that is pulled from the database as well. So I'm going to go ahead and close that PDF report. You can see the name of it is the production report, and then the date and the time as we configured. Get that window out of the way, close that. And also note here that you can do dynamic generation, or there's some other keys in here that you can generate PDF, Excel. You can do dynamic generation, which you can tell it to use either the original time period or however you want this to start. So print this every day at this time of day, so on and so forth. So you can configure that to automatically happen while the Dream Report runtime will automatically generate those reports for you. So that Dream Report runtime is separate from the InduSoft Web Studio runtime. You'll go and grab that data and then print the report for you. Also, you can use this project access. This will open up the folder where that project was. So you can open up the project folder, the reports folder, the web folder, wherever you're at. So there's some configuration capabilities there too. When you just click on the close button, this does not close the runtime. You're going to get a message here that says that it will still continue to run in the background, which is okay. There's another way to close that if you want to. So let's go ahead and configure up a few other things here. I'm going to let's say choose a pie chart. Let me scroll this down a little bit. I'll choose a pie graph. And maybe make this right here. And maybe we want to compare a few different levels of oil and water. So let's build this here. I will say again, that's external history. We'll go in and grab this data source here, or this data item. Click on the ellipse, and then we'll grab this. So this comes up here. And maybe the first thing that we grab is oil flow. I'll click on OK. And now that I have oil flow in here, maybe I want this to show up in green. And I'll add this to the list. And then I'll go pick another item. And we'll choose the oil. Oh boy, what was the other one? The oil pressure, the oil flow. Let's see. Which was the last one that I did? Was the oil flow. So in this case, I'll do the oil pressure. And then make sure you add that to the list. It warned me that it tried to automatically configure it for the next color, which is green, but I chose that. So let's do yellow here and add that. And then I'll choose one more so we get a decent looking pie chart here. And I think we've got a water pressure or something down in the bottom of the list. We'll try that one. We'll scroll down here, and there's a water pressure. Make sure that I'm doing that. Yep. And let's see, I don't have one of those other colors, so I'll add that. So now we have three different color. We have oil flow, oil pressure, and water pressure. And let's see, I can configure some of the appearance, put a title on this if I wanted to. Maybe this is a flow chart. I shouldn't call it a flow chart. It's not really a flow chart. It's a pie. And let's see, what else do we want on this? I think that's probably good for now. And if I've made changes just to the report but not to the project, I can just save my report. And instead of reloading the project, I can just reload just the reports. That will kick off the runtime again, which should already be running in the background and should come up a little bit quicker than last time. It'll do I believe it does a compile and then executes the runtime. And I should be able to generate this report. Select the report first, click on generate, and that will automatically come up. And hopefully we've got some values in our pie chart there, so you can see we're starting to grab data as well. One more quick thing before I take any questions here. And let's see. Close this. Close. And let's see. I'm just going to be just a couple more minutes here as I add one more thing, and then we'll take some questions. I wanted to show you that we can put a chart or an item table here. No, let's see. Let's grab the alarm table here. And what I'll do is put that down here. And I'll configure this up. And let's see, I've only done this one other time, so bear with me if I miss something here. I'm going to use the external history server, and I'm going to choose the default alarms that we have, but you have to check this checkbox here. And once I do that, then I could set up filters and priorities. And let's edit this list. Let's see, is there anything else I wanted to do here? I think that's okay. The appearance, then I get to choose which columns. I'll choose the start time. I don't need the end time. I don't need the response time, the duration. The alarm text is the message. Let's, instead of making that 21 wide, let's make that 60 wide. And let's see, anything else that we need in there. There's probably a few extra things that I don't necessarily need in here. But for the most part, I'm okay. And I can choose some different ways that this shows, but this is good enough for now. And I'll say OK. And now when I run this, this will go to the alarm history and grab the alarms. And I think maybe I do need to configure one more thing. Let's go back to the, let's make sure that this goes back to the last 10 minutes or so. See if there's enough information in there from the last 10 minutes of alarm. So I'll go ahead and generate this, save this, reload the report. go. And the runtime will pop open here in a second. Generate this report. And what we should see is some information from the alarms. And let's see, let me go back and reconfigure this and grab, I probably don't have any alarms generating. I'm not forcing those alarms. So let's go back through to yesterday. I could probably go back an hour or so. Let's just go back through yesterday and see what that does here. Save this. I have a sneaking suspicion that as many times as I've been running this, what it's going to do is give me a big long list of alarms, which is okay, because then you can see how that works. You could also change colors of this, and a lot of the things that I'm not showing you here is all the different configurability that you have within Dream Reports and the kind of the processing that it's capable of. I wanted to show you how to get some objects on the screen. There we go. So we can get data. You can see that the alarm text there is coming in, and we can go back through to yesterday and get that. And I would adjust these columns to make sure that this is right. But you can see how that expands and continues on to the next page accordingly. Now I could do this with any of the objects, the bar graphs I could put in there, the pies, things of that nature, page numbers. But that's pretty much what I wanted to show you with the Dream reporting and how easy it is to grab that information out of there. So if there's any questions that you have, bring them into the chat window or to the Q&A window, and we'll answer those. I do have one question. The SA user, is that the user that I created with administrative rights? That is the user that I created when I installed SQL Server. When I installed SQL Server, I gave it that administrative rights on that database. SA is the user with a particular password. So hopefully that answers your question. Another comment that we have in here is that you can limit the number of alarms that come in. Absolutely, you can. We can take the number of alarms. Whoops, I clicked on the chart. Didn't mean to do that. The number of alarms, and you can show how many you want, whether it's date and time, the absolute date and time, the number of days you want to go back to, the list, priority, how you want to filter that. So there's a lot of different capabilities there within that. Go back to the PowerPoint presentation here real quick. Basically what we did step by step was we connected to the data source, we designed the report templates, we generated the reports and would publish and distribute those. We publish those as PDFs. You could distribute them via email, FTP, a lot of different things. So some of the development tools, we have charts, showed you some of those. There's tables within the product. You saw the pictures. Within some of the objects, there's some widgets. There's a bar and a little meter symbol there as well, widget. Some additional resources that you have on the InduSoft Web Studio, on the InduSoft website, there's a sample project. There's a lot of different sample projects. Let me pull down the InduSoft website here. And here under Products and Downloads, you'll see Sample Applications. And here under Sample Applications, when this list appears, what we'll do is we'll scroll down, and I think it's right near the top here, but there's quite a few different sample applications that we have. There's one here called Dial Email, and that Dial Email will allow you to configure the email address, the user, the password, and try a few different things just by filling in the blanks. You don't have to mess around with that script. It does all the scripting for you behind the scenes. You can figure out the username and password and test out your email server configuration before you plug it into that form. That's a really nice thing that we have. Something else that we have is also under Products and Downloads, Dream Report. You can see here we have some information about the Dream Report, but here we have how to license. You basically send your email to License Report Add-on, and I'll show you that here in a minute as well. You can download the Dream Report product here, and this is the one that has the connection for InduSoft Web Studio built into it. Again, note you have to be using version 7.1 or later here. Here is the tutorial manual that I've been referencing a few different times. I'm going to bring that into view again. This tutorial manual is an incredible help. It walks you through step by step on how to configure everything, including installing, downloading and installing SQL Server Express. And the question that was up on the screen earlier was that the user that I created? Yeah, I actually installed it as mixed mode and then chose the user as SA and the password. And then step by step how to configure Dream Reports and how to configure the InduSoft project. Very clear descriptions on how to do this, and I highly recommend that you, if you're going to use Dream Report, that you take a look at this as well. There's a question, is installing administrator a SQL requirement or a Dream Reports requirement? If he's just doing InduSoft, do we need to be admin to install SQL? The question is no. Well, let me answer this as two questions there. If you're just using InduSoft reporting, do you need to be administrator to install SQL? The answer is no. You can install that as your user, and just install it local. Where the administrative piece comes into play is to create those data source names, or the DSN connection. And Dream Report uses that DSN connection into the database, and Microsoft forces you to create those DSNs as the administrator. So you have to install SQL Server as the administrator and create those DSNs while you're administrator. But just to use the database connectivity and the reports built into InduSoft Web Studio, you do not have to be logged on as the overall administrator. Another question that came in is, what happens if alarms are not acknowledged within a given time? That's more of an InduSoft Web Studio setting, because this is just generating reports. You can't acknowledge reports or acknowledge alarms from let's say a printed report. So those are things that you have to work through in InduSoft Web Studio. You can choose whether or not the user has to acknowledge those, whether it's optional or mandatory to put in a comment, let's say. And same thing with prioritization. That's all done within InduSoft Web Studio. And for those of you who don't know, we have all of our training videos on our website as well. So if you have questions about how to use InduSoft Web Studio, you can always go to the training sessions here, the training videos. And if you can't happen to get to Austin, Texas, and the United States, you can always watch these training videos. And this will show you how to answer any of the alarm questions or the trending questions that I see popping up in the Q&A. So, another point that we have brought up by one of our InduSoft people is that if you have not administrative rights created correctly, Dream Report will actually catch you on it and warn you that you're don't have the right administrative rights. The PC demo report feature that I brought up earlier, that is installed with InduSoft Web Studio. We have a previous webinar video on our website and the tutorial manual and projects that I just showed to you. I think I didn't go far enough down. Let me show you one more thing here. On the Dream Report section, not only can you download that tutorial, but you can download the Dream Report projects, and you can even view the previous Dream Report webinar that we've had here. So there's some additional resources that you have. I don't see any new questions coming in. We're slightly over our time limit, so I'd like to thank everybody for coming. A couple quick things. We had some questions get submitted when people registered. I'd like to answer those. Somebody wanted to know if you could take the trend objects that are within InduSoft Web Studio and embed those within Dream Reports. I've not tested this, but one opportunity that you could use would be to there is a way to save screenshots or save the trends as, let's say, a JPEG, or I forget exactly which graphic format, but then you could possibly use that to embed right into one of your Dream Reports, or use the chart capability within Dream Report itself. Hopefully I've answered that. Another opportunity would be remote, and the fact that the database connection, I believe the database connection has to be on the local machine to get the data source names connected up to it, but there are other opportunities to be able to do this, to connect up and generate the report. Since the database has to be on a PC, and InduSoft Web Studio, maybe it's running, InduSoft Web Studio is running on another PC, but the server, the database, and everything else has to connect there. There's a possibility that you could install Dream Report on that server PC and then use it that way, basically on the local machine. And then licensing, another way that, let's see, I have it at the bottom of that tutorial. I'm getting prompted here by one of our guys that says it can be remote. I just don't know all the details of that, so hopefully that answers whoever submitted that question. All the way at the bottom of this tutorial, the second to the last page here talks about licensing. Essentially what you do is you download Dream Report and install it, and then under Help Register, you'll see the registration pop up. You'll fill in a few lines, and once you do that, it'll generate an activation.dat file. You will find that in this location here. You'll submit that to this email address, which is licensereportaddon@indusoft.com. And then we will generate, once you've paid for that, we'll generate a license for you. We'll send you back license.dat. You'll put it back in that same folder, and then you can go to the Help About and see that it's been all registered and activated. So that's how you register the product, and hopefully that answers all the questions. Let's see. Don't see any more questions coming in, so again, we're just slightly over time. Hopefully everybody got something out of this, enjoyed the webinar, learned something from it, and had fun. We thank everybody for attending. We really appreciate the enthusiasm that we have and the continued attendance that we have. Tell your coworkers, tell your friends. Your neighbors probably won't be interested, but tell them anyway. And again, fill out the survey. Let us know what other webinars you'd like to see. And I'd like to, again, thank everybody for attending. And absolutely, have a great day. And if you need to contact us, here's some information. You can always go to our website and find that too. Again, thank you for attending. And hopefully everybody has a great day, a great evening, wherever you are in the world. Appreciate it. Thanks.